distinguished speakers, moderators, panelists, and participants. Thank you for joining us from all over the region. A warm welcome to the commemoration event for the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation. Officially, the date is September 12, 2021, and we celebrate today as the 12th fell on a weekend. On this special occasion, we are pleased to hold the Intergovernmental Organizations meeting on South-South and Triangular Cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. We are delighted to join hands with the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific and the United Nations Development Program in organizing today's meeting. My name is He Xin, Program Analyst in the Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific of the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. I will be your MC for the plenary parts of today's event. And with your kind permission, I will move to the opening session now. First, please join me in watching a video message from Mr. Adel Abdeladov, Director of UNESCO.
Your Excellencies, it is my pleasure to be part of the commemoration of the UN Day for South-South Cooperation in Asia and the Pacific for the year 2021. This initiative brings representatives from intergovernmental organizations in the region together in one forum and to discuss how South-South cooperation can facilitate solutions and recovery. The vulnerability of the countries of the South has required the necessary resilience to avoid the advancing storms of the pandemic. South-South cooperation can help pave the pathway to recovery in the Global South and facilitate access to vaccines. Although the Asia and the Pacific region, as other regions, has been adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, countries which develop vaccines or established production facilities have donated or enabled procurement at lower prices for low-income countries. Recently, I had a discussion with a minister from a country in the region who wanted to explore the creation of a task team for a concerted effort to facilitate access to vaccine among countries of the South. The COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the interrelationships between the environment and our livelihoods, and the Asia-Pacific region in many ways is on the front line of a changing climate. Although many countries suffer from dramatic climate impacts due to geographical and capacity constraints, some are also turning the tide for more ambitious climate action. I look forward to learning from the discussion how South-South cooperation can continue to bring support to countries in need to achieve their climate change impacted mitigation ambitions. The ongoing pandemic has also revealed challenges in tackling the digital divide. Many communities in the Global South still lack access to internet of sufficient quality to work and learn from home, presenting an acute risk for long-term economic growth. A digital-led recovery is not viable if employees and customers alike cannot participate in the digital economy. I look forward to learning from the discussion how South-South cooperation can be used to assist countries in the region and bridge the digital gap. In the Global South, most governments lack stimulus packages to help cushion the recession. Small and medium enterprises and entrepreneurs are facing difficult challenges from the pandemic. I believe that the discussion today will shed some light on how regional cooperation frameworks and South-South cooperation can enhance small and medium enterprises' resilience. Lastly, I wish to extend my appreciation to the co-organizers, ISCAP and UNDP, for putting their efforts together and wish you successful deliberations on the celebration of the UN Day for South-South Cooperation 2021.
Thank you. We also have key messages from Mr. Antonio Guterres, United Nations Secretary General, and His Excellency Mr. Volkan Bozkır, President of the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly, to commemorate the UN Day for South-South Cooperation this year. Please join me in watching the video messages from them.
I'm pleased to join you as you mark this UN Day for South-South Cooperation. The COVID-19 pandemic is the most complex immediate challenge facing our world, and it is undermining hard-won social, economic, and environmental gains. In such trying times, the solidarity that underpins South-South cooperation has once again proven vital for developing countries. Throughout the pandemic, countries of the Global South have shared their knowledge and resources to support response and recovery efforts. But together, we must do much more. We need deeper international cooperation to address the global health crisis, reduce poverty and inequality, achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and avert climate catastrophe. That means building inclusive and resilient societies, empowering women and youth, leveraging digital, greener and bluer initiatives, and expanding sustainable financing. South-South and triangular cooperation offer concrete solutions to these shared challenges. The United Nations will continue to support these efforts, including through our system-wide strategy on South-South and triangular cooperation for sustainable development. As the world seeks to ramp up COVID-19 response and recovery and tackle the existential threat of climate change, South-South and triangular cooperation is more essential than ever. Thank you for your leadership and support.
Commemoration of the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation. My sincere appreciation to the UN Office for South-South Cooperation for organizing this meeting. I would also like to congratulate all involved on the successful session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation that took place this June. Dear colleagues, I only have a few more weeks in office, so I'm going to be short and frank. We need to do more to support least developed countries in recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, and South-South cooperation plans an important role in that regard. I have a lengthy list of facts and figures about the impact on developing countries, on everything from income to inequality, from gender empowerment to access to social services. Suffice it to say, these figures are not good. Years of development gains have been wiped away or are in jeopardy. The question that comes to mind then is, what can be done about it? On this, I would point to the revitalized United Nations development system, particularly regional economic commissions, as a tool to catalyze South-South and triangular cooperation in support of country programs. As I saw on my travels, particularly in Central Asia and in the Caribbean, South-South and triangular cooperation are pivotal to addressing challenges, particularly those that cross borders and regions. UN country and regional teams are well placed to promote and support these efforts at enhancing cooperation, and I encourage my member states to make every effort to work in conjunction with these teams. Excellencies, it can be argued that the pandemic forced many of us to look beyond our usual partners and to build or strengthen new partnerships, whether to secure access to medical supplies and vaccines or to boost economic cooperation and engagement so as to offset the losses associated with the pandemic. We should not ignore or forget the linkages that have been made. In the same way, the pandemic pushed us to rely ever more on digital technologies. And in that regard, I'm deeply impressed by the launch of the South-South Galaxy platform, developed by the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, to facilitate partnership brokering and global knowledge sharing. I encourage UN partners and member states alike to make use of this platform. Building on this point, I would be remiss if I did not reiterate one of my consistent messages during the 75th session of the UN General Assembly, which is the need to close the digital divide and expand access to new technologies. As I have said time and again, the lack of digital access is rapidly becoming the new face of inequality. If we are looking for new priorities for South-South and triangular cooperation in this post-COVID area, then digital and energy access, along with vaccines and socioeconomic recovery, are clear low-hanging fruit. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I hope that my reflections have been useful, and I look forward to hearing what others have to contribute. Thank you.
As Thailand is the host of the upcoming Global South-South Development Expo 2022, and also the host country for the UN Day for South-South Cooperation, we are delighted to invite Mrs. Wurira Sharantal, Director General of Thailand International Cooperation Agency, to address this meeting through a video message.
Sawadika and good morning. Mr. Adel Abdellatif, UNOS Director at Interim. Mr. Christophe Balvet, UNDP Deputy Regional Director for Asia and the Pacific. Mr. Adnan Aliani, Director of Strategy and Program Management Division, UNSCAP. Distinguished panelists, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to join the forefront advocates for South-South and triangular cooperation at today's Intergovernmental Organizations meeting to commemorate the UN Day for South-South cooperation in Asia and the Pacific. This year, we mark this special day by commencing a platform for intergovernmental organizations, regional groupings, and governmental agencies of countries in this region to come together to further discuss the important agenda for development cooperation. I believe that the three thematic areas for today's discussions, climate change and green recovery, digital transformation, and the SMEs recovery and entrepreneurship, are highly relevant during these challenging times and will remain prevalent in the post-COVID-19 era. We will be pleased to share our first-hand experiences in addressing these challenges. Distinguished panelists, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Royal Thai government, through Thailand International Cooperation Agency or TICA, has forged mutually beneficial development partnerships with countries in the Global South, as well as successful triangular cooperation with partners that have attained higher levels of socio-economic development. Let me share with you a few highlights of our development cooperation. First, the Sufficiency Economy Philosophy, or the SEP. Our proven development approach is now one of the guiding principles of our international development cooperation. It has been widely recognized at the international level as an approach toward sustainable development. Over the years, we have shared our experiences in applying the SEP with other developing countries across different continents in order to help them improve their people's livelihoods and build resilient communities. Secondly, the Royal Thai government is now advocating for the Bio-Circular Green Economy Model, or the BCG, as part of its development strategies, especially to support the post-COVID-19 economic recovery and achieve more balanced and sustainable development. We see the strengths of entrepreneurship and technological innovations that the BCG model combines to find green solutions that can help address the environmental problems. Last but not least, Thailand has sent out Friends from Thailand, or the FFT volunteers, who engage with our partner countries on the ground in diverse development areas, including human resources development, agriculture, and public health. On this note, I want to highlight Thailand's ongoing efforts and commitment in helping our partner countries, especially our neighboring countries, to strengthen their public health capacities to combat the COVID-19 through bilateral and triangular cooperation. Distinguished panelists, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you to continue our discourse on South-South and triangular cooperation by participating in a series of events of the Global South-South Development, or GSSD Expo, which will begin in November this year and will culminate in an in-person format in September 2022 in Bangkok, Thailand. I am glad that the GSSD Expo, under the theme Advancing South-South and Triangular Cooperation for Sustainable COVID-19 Recovery Towards a Smart and Resilient Future, has received tremendous support from our co-hosts, ESCAP and UNOST. We look forward to welcoming your participation to exchange ideas and experiences, explore opportunities and innovative ways in development cooperation. In closing, I wish all of you vibrant discussions and fruitful outcomes. I am certain that the participants will be fully engaged and entertained by our esteemed panel of experts. Thank you very much for your attention.
Next, I would like to welcome Mr. Christophe Bayue, UNDP Deputy Regional Director for Asia and the Pacific, to deliver his remarks.
Thank you very much, Harthin. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings from the Bangkok Regional Center of UNDP, and I'm very, very happy to join you at this intergovernmental organization meeting, and very honored to address you live as we together mark the UN Day for South-South Cooperation. And this is an opportunity for me to reaffirm UNDP's very strong commitment to South-South cooperation. UNDP is a very strong believer in South-South cooperation, an advocate for South-South cooperation, and a proponent of South-South cooperation in all programmatic work within the Asia-Pacific region, but also across regions. And we will definitely continue to be involved and support South-South cooperation in the years to come. But I would also like to play this meeting and this message in the context of today's world, 2021, and the years to come. And I believe there are three reasons why South-South cooperation is even more relevant than ever. The first one is the need to respond to and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. And here, South-South cooperation has a very important role to play. Interestingly, we see that in UNDP projects with governments to respond to COVID-19, 20% of them have a South-South cooperation component, largely focused on health sector, health governance, but there is much more that we would like to do on South-South cooperation, for instance, for green recovery and other dimension of the recovery from COVID-19. The second reason is the opportunity that we have to capitalize on the powerful, on the potential of innovation and digitalization. And here again, we see huge opportunity for South-South cooperation, some of them already happening. For instance, in Bangladesh, UNDP has been working with the government society on Digital Center for Information to Citizens, which is now planned to be replicated in Bhutan, the Maldives, and Fiji. We're also doing work on anticipatory governance in Vietnam, on e-commerce in Cambodia, or on digitalization strategy in Laos, which can also lend itself to South-South cooperation. And we'll do that with our Innovation Regional Center in Bangkok and also our acceleration lab in different parts of the regions. And the third dimension is the climate emergency, which is not to be taken away by COVID-19. Of course, we're doing a lot of work to help countries come up with ambitious NDCs, but a lot of the success we could have in climate change, addressing climate change, lies in the implementation of NDCs. And here again, a lot of work is being done by UNDP and other UN agencies, and much more can be done to actually have South-South cooperation exchanges work on the implementation of the NDC, finding solutions, finding new approaches to address climate change, both mitigation and adaptation at the policy level, at the technology level, at the macro level with government, but also with civil society actors and the private sector. So a very large agenda, a very ambitious agenda for South-South cooperation. UNDP will be part of it with, I trust, many of you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bayue. Next, let's welcome Mr. Adnan Aliani, Director of Strategy and Program Management Division of ESCAP, to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Asia Pacific commemoration of the UN Day for South-South Cooperation and to the meeting of the Intergovernmental Organizations on South-South and Triangular Cooperation in Asia and the Pacific. ESCAP is delighted to co-host these events with the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific, and UNDP's Regional Bureau for Asia and the Pacific. Today's events offer us an opportunity to highlight the contributions and the potential of South-South and Triangular Cooperation in helping countries of the region to respond to COVID-19 and to advance sustainable development in the region. South-South and Triangular Cooperation has always been at the heart of ESCAP's work. It underpins our research and analysis work, our intergovernmental and normative work, and our technical assistance programs. South-South cooperation is also a key modality for our member states to address transboundary issues such as responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate change emergency, trade and transport connectivity, as well as to issues of common concern such as poverty and inequalities, environment and ecosystem management, disaster risk reduction, and social development. The 62 members and associate member states of ESCAP reiterated their commitment to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs despite the setbacks caused by COVID-19 through ESCAP Commission Resolution 77/1, which was adopted in April of this year. South-South and Triangular Cooperation was recognized as a key modality in achieving the outcomes of the resolution. Our work on building back better from COVID-19 in the context of the 2030 Agenda focuses on 4 broad areas of cooperation amongst member states of Asia and the Pacific. Firstly, protecting people and enhancing resilience. Secondly, supporting economic recovery. Thirdly, restoring supply chains and supporting small and medium-sized enterprises. And fourthly, protecting and restoring ecosystems. This resonates very well with the panel discussions that are scheduled for today's meeting. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Over the years, our member states have achieved remarkable economic development and technological progress. Many are now able to provide technical assistance and development finance, as well as share innovative approaches to help other countries of the South to attain sustainable development. To scale up such support, ESCAP, together with the government of Thailand and UNOSC, inaugurated the Asia Pacific Director General's Forum on South-South and Triangular Cooperation in June of 2018. The purpose of the Asia Pacific DG Forum is to serve as a regional platform for member states to deliberate on the challenges and opportunities of South-South cooperation, to strengthen the institutional framework of South-South and Triangular Cooperation in Asia and the Pacific, and to share experiences, good practices, and success stories in promoting South-South and Triangular Cooperation. The 4th Asia Pacific DG Forum is planned to be held back-to-back with the Global South-South Development Expo, which will be organized in Bangkok in September of 2022. Finally, ESCAP would like to see the Intergovernmental Organizations meeting on South-South and Triangular Cooperation in Asia and the Pacific region become an effective networking platform for regional and sub-regional intergovernmental organizations to mainstream South-South and Triangular Cooperation in their work. We look forward to rich discussions and innovative lessons to take away from the panel discussions today and feed them into our preparations for the 4th Asia Pacific DG Forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ariani. As highlighted in the speeches of UN Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly, UNOSSC has been promoting South-South knowledge sharing and partnership brokering through an online platform called the South-South Galaxy. It also developed the UN system-wide strategy on South-South and triangular cooperation for sustainable development in collaboration with other UN entities. Mr. Dennis Dakla, Regional Coordinator for Asia and the Pacific of UNOSC, will give more information about these tools and how to access them. Mr. Dakla, please take the floor.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning from Bangkok. Thank you very much. I have about 5 minutes to make this presentation. So it's not really a presentation, it's information. Our principals have mentioned a number of tools that we use for South-South cooperation. And so I just wanted to expound on them a little bit to tell them where you can access them and what they are about. Next, please. Next. We're going to look at 3 components. The first is United Nations System-Wide Strategy on South-South and Triangular Cooperation, 2020 to 2024. We'll talk about the South-South Galaxy. And last but not least, we'll talk about South-South profiles. Next. Starting with the system-wide strategy on South-South and Triangular Cooperation for Sustainable Development, 2020 to 2024. This, in fact, was called for at BAPA Plus 40, the second United Nations Conference on South-South Cooperation. And subsequent to BAPA Plus 40, 21 UN agencies got together and put together this strategy for South-South cooperation. It's not the first time that we're doing this strategy. We had another one in 2016 and some before that. But this is important because it's consistent with the times that we are living in. And it gives a baseline from where all of us can start on thinking and working with South-South and triangular cooperation. The important point I wanted to make here is that if you want to access the system-wide strategy, you have the link in front of you, and our colleagues are also going to put it in the chat box. I'll move on to the next item. The next item is the Galaxy, South-South Galaxy. And again, it's something that was called for at the United Nations Conference, even though during the conference itself, the process of putting this platform together was quite advanced. You can see the description. It's actually a replacement of what we used to have as a booklet in the past, which was called South-South Cooperation, in that it includes the development solutions. You can find information about experts on South-South and triangular cooperation. And as a platform online, each institution can have its own page where it can upload independently its content, making it accessible to a lot of other people. So just to look at what we have done as the region in the Pacific in supporting the South-South Galaxy, 27 governmental organizations have already joined, 11 UN agencies, 8 international organizations, 30 academia and think tanks, 6 private sector. So you can see, and over 268 good practices, case studies have been submitted from the Asia Pacific. So my call on you today is to join the South-South Galaxy and use it as much as possible to get the information on development solutions, but also to upload your own experiences. Again, the link is there and it will be sent to your chat so that you can join the South-South Galaxy. Next, please. The initiative that we call South-South Profiles is actually a product of some suggestions by my colleagues here in Bangkok. Somebody suggested, why don't you reach out to some of the people in the region and hear their views on South-South cooperation. And we initially started with a couple of UNDP resident representatives In fact, we started with Christoph, who spoke earlier before. That was the first profile that we did. And then we thought that for the UN Day for South-South Cooperation, we would like to expand beyond that smaller group. So we have had ministers, like on the left, that's the Minister of Planning in Indonesia, the Excellencies, and then we have the Executive Secretary of UNESCO. We have got a secretary from India, and we have Ambassador Mara today, the Secretary General of PIDF, and Malhotra, who used to be the resident coordinator in Vietnam until the end of this past month. We have the director of ISTIC, and from the project side, we got somebody who is collaborating with the South-South and Triangular Cooperation Project in Sri Lanka. And so if you go to the pages that are provided, you will find the profiles. The profiles are actually their opinions on what South-South Cooperation is doing for their organizations, how they're applying it, and their thoughts of how we could work together, improve on delivering through South-South Cooperation. If you can just advance to the next page. For the purpose of this meeting, you can look at some of the excerpts from their interviews. For example, this is the excerpt with the Minister of Planning in Indonesia. We have provided these excerpts for you to see that indeed they are very interesting points of view relating to South-South cooperation. And we will continue to do so even after the UN Day for South-South Cooperation. We'll be reaching out to you. And should you want, after reading, want your profile to be featured, do not hesitate to reach out to us. And so for me, this will be the end of the presentation. I'll see you later, but do enjoy the South-South profiles in particular. There is very good reading, even though it's interviews, sometimes it reads like a well of knowledge because the people interviewed know so much about South-South and Triangular Cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nakla. We will now move to session 2. It is our privilege to have a group of distinguished moderators, speakers, and panelists from various international intergovernmental organizations, as well as a great number of participants joining us. Together, we will discuss 3 priority areas for the Asia-Pacific region. First, climate change and green development. Second, digital transformation for COVID-19 recovery. And third, SMEs and entrepreneurship. You will be automatically assigned to the breakout sessions you have chosen during your registration. If this doesn't happen, you can also join by clicking breakout rooms in your meeting controls down below the screen. In the breakout room, you will be welcomed by your respective moderator, who will then take you through the session. 10 minutes before the allocated time, you will return to the plenary while the moderator and rapporteur finalize the plenary report. That is, unless the moderator opts to include everyone in the preparation of the final report. We will see you in 1.5 hours.
the COVID-19 pandemic, we have many challenges, but one of the challenges has been how do we continue to work better? And ICTs have played a very important role. Technologies have played a very important role. And this is not just because of COVID, but even before COVID, you would agree with me that there has been a rapid technological advancement in the areas of artificial intelligence, in the areas of big data, robotics, as well as cloud computing, Internet of Things. So many things are there which are transforming our societies, transforming the United Nations system. Also, very importantly, how do we interface these systems with the human systems we have? So that's where we have many challenges. There is a huge potential for digital transformation, but also there are many challenges in the Asia Pacific region. You know very well, Asia Pacific region is not uniform. In my previous role as the regional director for Asia Pacific for science and technology, we have big countries like China, very advanced countries like Japan and South Korea. Also, we have very small countries like small islands like Samoa, for example. We have small countries like Timor-Leste, countries in transition like Afghanistan, and also we have countries like the Central Asian countries. So the level of digital transformation in different countries is very different. The capabilities are very different. UNESCO's work, for example, I would like to highlight that there are many challenges we have identified in moving forward with digital transformation, especially in the context of South-South cooperation. Very important lesson for us has been how do we build capacity and how do we bring the right kind of policy advice at the levels of the ministries, and how do we promote, for example, in the area of education, mobile learning. Not all nations are at the same level. How do we make sure that South-South cooperation can help countries together working with the centers, for example, like ISTIC, which has been mentioned by Dennis, in Malaysia, and the countries, for example, in need like Timor-Leste and others. So we have a big challenge. Also, middle-income countries like Indonesia have a lot to offer and a lot to do, both within Indonesia, with so many islands there. You have to have so much cooperation within the country and cooperation which can be extended to other countries. Also, big challenge is ICT competency framework, for example, in the area of education for teachers, for example. How do we actually bring multilingual aspects through South-South cooperation, open resources for digitalization, as well as looking into open software? And how do we have inclusive systems? How do we deal with people with disabilities? So many of those challenges are there. So we are going to have some excellent speakers today who are going to give us ideas from the region on how South-South cooperation is helping, what are the challenges. We have prepared some questions, but we will be also happy to take questions through the chat box or through Q&A. And I'm very thankful to the team which has worked very hard. I'm also thankful to the speakers who have given their presentations in advance, and I really enjoyed going through the PPTs. So let's make a start. We have four very capable colleagues who are going to give their perspectives first. So let's say from 5 to 7, 8 minutes maximum, so that then we can open some discussions. So I will give brief introductions so that there would be more time for colleagues to give their presentations and we can learn more from them. So we start, first of all, with our very dear colleague, Mr. Masanori Kondo, who is the Secretary General of Asia Pacific Telecommunity, APT. So he has a tremendous experience of over 25 years nationally and internationally. He has worked with the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications, MIC in Japan, and he has also been a diplomat in Jordan, and he has been working on bilateral and multilateral issues. So without further ado, let me request Mr. Masanori Kondo to give his presentation. So we will go presentation by presentation, then we come back to questions and answers. So dear Masanori Kondo, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Khan. Very good morning. I'd like to first I'd like to express my sincere gratitude for UNOSSC as well as the UNDP and the UNSCAP for inviting me for this commemoration of the UN Day on South-South Cooperation. It's my honor to be invited. Thank you very much, and good morning, all participants. So let me share my screen first so that okay, I can start my presentation. So today I'd like to, since I don't have so much time, I'd like to just briefly talk about digital transformation and COVID-19. So first, APT is a Pacific community which is the only ICT focused or specialized intergovernmental organization in this region. So basically, we have 38 member countries in this region, which means that basically Ministry of ICT or Ministry of Telecommunications are our focal point, together with the private sectors. So as in terms of APT context, when we say digital transformation, it is not just digitalization itself, but rather more than that, transformation of society by digitalization. Of course, as ICT or like a Ministry of ICT, promoting digitalization itself has been one of the most important policy agenda, and still it is an important agenda. But at the same time, when we talk about digital transformation, this requires fundamental understanding of digitalization plus creative architecture design for a society. So today, today's talking point of my presentations are here. Just compare before COVID-19 and with COVID-19 under the current situation. So as APT, we have been supporting our members' activities and effort in terms of establishing ICT infrastructure, both fixed and wireless. And number two, promote ICT services and industry in their own countries together with in this region, and also bridging digital gap by providing capacity building as well as a pilot project. So what is the new things with COVID-19? So last year, just after the COVID-19 pandemic was started, not like it unfortunately, but we organized so-called APT Wave Dialogue, focusing on COVID-19 and ICT policy agenda, what Ministry of ICT or regulators should do under this current situation. At that time, there was many like experiences and information and trials we shared among our members. So there are several layers such as infrastructure, application, and what government should or can do. So basically, today I just want to share the information that in terms of infrastructure, there are many things regulators or policymakers conducted in order to handle the situation of COVID-19. Such as network sharing or the discussion of network neutrality and so on. At that time, those actions, policy actions or regulatory actions were kind of emergency actions. So it was introduced as a temporary measures. And at that time, members discussed in each layer, such as infrastructure or application or government, the stakeholders, government or telecom operators and the users, who should do what or when or how long and so on. So those we try to identify a kind of matrix together with these kind of layers or stakeholders aspect. So those are one of the activities we conducted last year, and we are doing the in line with that direction, we are doing the same thing in this year as well. And on the other hand, as an APT, we have APT strategic plan, which has 5 pillars, meaning that connectivity, innovation, trust and safety, inclusion, capacity building, and collaboration, and collaboration. So these are 5 pillars of our strategic plan, but I would like to emphasize the importance of connectivity was very much focused after the COVID-19. So with COVID-19, since last year towards this year, what we learned is that role of and function of ICT is very much recognized. But as a way forward in coming years, we know that it is still difficult and it has been a problem, but now we focus very much the necessity of bridging digital gap, because as we depend more and more to the ICT services such as remote work or e-health or e-education and so on, which are very necessary for under the current situation, and many countries are trying to implement those e-education or e-health, but without thinking the actual situation of a digital gap, the kind of gap will be expanded if we don't do anything. So on one hand, the importance of ICT is very much recognized, but on the other hand, the digital gap is, if we don't do anything, digital gap will be more, become as a crucial source to expand the gap between haves and have-nots. So that's a very important policy agenda for us as APT, as well as ministries or policymakers, regulators in each member countries.
Okay, thank you very much, dear Mr. Kondo. That was really very punctual.
Actually, I missed one slide. This is the last slide.
Please.
And, yeah, as Professor Kang said, each members or each country has its own situation, even under this COVID-19 situation. So as APT, we are thinking about the necessity of so-called tailor-made support and assistance for each APT members based on their situation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear Mr. Kondo. You finished excellent on time. Japanese efficiency, very good. Thank you very much. The format is we will have the presentations, then we will have formal question answers. But for clarification, I would like to ask a clarification question to you very quickly. I really like for you to share with us the APT Web Dialogue May 2020, where you have given us this pyramid of economy, government application infrastructure, and you have given us very good explanation of there may be new left behind because of the digital gap we have. Are there some practical ideas which came from your web dialogue? How can we promote better connectivity in nations whose infrastructure is not so good? What can be the source of cooperation in that regard? Very quickly, then we move to the next presentation.
Yeah, very quickly, as you know, during the COVID-19 situation, the volume of data traffic is increased, so exponentially. So what as policymakers and regulators did was to expand, let's say, wireless capacity for mobile operators to allocate a specific or additional bandwidths, while frequency bandwidths for them in order to facilitate them to provide more bandwidths for users. But as I said, that is a temporary or emergency actions. So we need to consider how we can sustainably provide the good infrastructure or networks.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is very important. So it's not only the emergency, the long-term sustainability, because these advances need to continue. And that's where we need more South-South cooperation and sharing of bandwidth among nations can also be very, very important. So thank you very much. We will come back to you with our questions, dear Mr. Kondo. So now we move to our next presenter, who is also very capable, Professor Dr. Bambang Pramudjutati, the Vice Rector for Research, Innovation, Partnership, and Alumni. And he is representing ITS, and he's also representing the Commission on Science and Technology for Sustainable Development in South ComSat. It's a center of excellence, and Professor Bambang has worked with the Ministry of Education. He has received many awards for his excellent work. He is a reviewer of many interesting initiatives, including the national research and establishment of the new program by DICTI. So as a professor of mechanical engineering, he is doing many, many interesting things. Let's hear from Professor Dr. Bambang some of the related ideas and issues and how can we make progress on South-South cooperation. Professor Bambang, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me share my presentation. Can you see my presentation? Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Khan. Good morning, the distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you all are well and always healthy. Thank you for the opportunity that was given to me in this amazing event. My name is Bambang Pramudjutati, as I introduced earlier, and currently I'm a lecturer with the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Institut Teknologi 10 November, Surabaya, Indonesia. This morning, I'd like to share about the digital transformation for COVID-19 recovery, and the case study that I'm going to talk is in my institution, ITS Surabaya. In this event, as also mentioned earlier, I represent ITS and ComSat as a representative of ComSat Center of Excellence. Therefore, I'd like to introduce these two institutions before I share our experience here. First of all, I would like also to convey the greeting and warm regard from Dr. Akhtar Nasir, the incumbent Executive Director of ComSat. This is about us. So the firstly is the ComSat. We know that ComSat stands for the Commission of Science and Technology for Sustainable Development in the South, which is an intergovernmental organization of the developing countries in the South. So at present, ComSat has 27 developing countries as a member, which including countries in three continents, Africa, Asia, as well as in Latin America. The objective of this organization is assisting the member countries to build and sustain a critical mass world-class scientists and technologists, and to utilize their expertise to expediting science-led sustainable development. There are plenty of programs that ComSat has, for example, the ComSat University of Islamabad, and then ComSat Telehealth Program, postgraduate scholarship, postdoctoral fellowship, and many more programs that are offered by this organization. There's a thing important to note that ComSat has signed an MOU with UNOS in November 2018, and it means that ComSat is willing to join any network established at the platform of UNOS for future collaboration. In addition, ComSat is very open for collaboration with like-minded institutions for socio-economic uplift of the developing countries, particularly in ASEAN Pacific region. But that's about ComSat. And then ITS itself is stand for Institut Teknologi 10 November, located in East Java, Surabaya, Indonesia. It is a leading university in the field of science and technology. We have 8 faculties, and then we also supported by 10 Center of Excellence, and then 5 research center, and then we also have a study, a center of study, etc. So currently we have roughly 21,000 students, including 2,500 graduate students and approximately 1,020 faculty members. We collaborate with ComSat. In collaboration with the ComSat, we're ready to establish the ComSat ITS Center of Advanced Research in Innovation on Artificial Intelligence, IoT, and Robotics. So let us work together in this area with the platform of ComSat. During the pandemic, our country is one of the hit by the pandemic as well. However, our institution committed working hand in hand with the government to fight the COVID-19. So not only many innovative products were produced during the pandemic, but we also push ourselves to make changes in our education process to adapt with the situation, including the digital transformation. Therefore, it is our pleasure to share with you all the technology, product processes, as well as the best practice that develop in our institution. And for sure, we are also open for collaborating with other developing countries from the platform of UNOS through COMSAT. Before the pandemic, we actually have a framework of ITS transformation with the digital transformation has become the foundation of IT 4.0 strategy, which going to push the internal enhancement, innovation development, as well as international engagement. And hopefully with those things, we are going to have excellent services, outstanding outputs, and best reputation. And at the end, we would be able to creating innovative future leader contributing to nation, as well as advancing the prosperity of the nation with the resources that we have, network, great people, and great system. So the few key elements that we see is there's a strategy, organization, work culture, technology, user, and human resources. This is very important key element in successfully implementing the digital transformation. I'm going to explain a few of them. For example, the strategy. This is very important that we have the improve the agility of the policy as well as the implementation of IT, such that if there's need of changes that can be done quickly. And we also use the open standard for IT such that if there's integration can be done quickly, and in-house, we use in-house resources to focus on core domain business process only, and we use we collaborate with third party in helping support and generic domain. In terms of technology, we also work step by step. So firstly, we are adopting the new technology and new open standard, and then we gradually move the architecture that we originally have into microservice monolithic, and then we adopt the big data, etc., such that at the end we will be able to implement the adoption IT security framework, because IT security, I guess, has become very crucial in this digital era. And I probably forgot to mention that the pandemic is somehow a blessing in disguise. We have all these programs actually is going to be run within 4 to 5 years, but with the pandemic, we are forced to work faster to prepare the whole thing such that we can continue our business in education. And then this is an example of services or product that we have. So we use the My ITS platform for integration, the integrated application, data, and infrastructure of ITS. So in 2019, we only have an additional of 6 applications. And then with 2020, we are forced to do a lot more. And then in 2021, we also use a lot more for that. And this application is used for any activities or any things that happen in our institution. So the student, the parent of the student, the human resources, the lecturer, everything, they use all this application for many of the things that we done. For example, the MyITS classroom. So this class, everything can be accessed from this MyITS classroom. All the material will be available there. The test, everything available in this platform. And then this is another example of the product that we have. We developed the remote laboratory IoT on fundamental physics. So one can run this experiment remotely. So in the old days, we have to come and run this thing in the laboratory. But however, due to this pandemic, we are forced to have this thing run remotely. And then we also have the online lab work innovation. For example, this is the remote laboratory with IoT. And then we have the simulation which can also be run remotely. And then we have also lab based on video recording. This is, we think this is needed to be done because when all the class running online, then it's very hard for them not to see what's actually happening in this engineering or science. And then we also push ourselves to have this massive open online courses. In 2019, we have none. But then 2020, we forced ourselves, we have 104 MOC available online. And then in 2021, we another 200 MOC available. This is my last slide. This is another innovation related to COVID-19 and mostly also uses the digital technology. The facility is probably a very simple one, but we produce 150,000 pieces or more, and then we distributed across the country. That's the beginning of the COVID, which is very needed. And then we have this robot, RAISA, we call it, Robot Assistant ITS and Erlangga. This is to serve in order to replace the nurse, so that there's no contact between nurse and the patient. And it has been used in more than 15 hospitals. And recently I was asked by one of the company to get another 50 of the robot to be distributed in several hospitals in Indonesia. And then we also developed the emergency ventilator, which can be used to help the COVID patient. And the lastly is the oxygen concentrator. We also have in the beginning, we also have this iNose 19. This is the rapid screening COVID-19 using the electronic nose. It used the auxiliary sweat non-infectious as a medium to be detected. And then we also developed, this is an example of Plasma Hub ITS ACID. This is to connect between the donor and the applicant for covalescent plasma. So this is can be used widely in Indonesia. We work together with various hospital as well as the provider. I guess that's the conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for the time. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, dear Professor Bambang. I have a clarification to you as well. And excellent presentation. Good to see many things moving very fast because COVID, you said, has been a blessing, which helped move many things at the Institute ITS. One of the links you have is the Commission on Science and Technology for Sustainable Development in the South, COMSATS. Can you please quickly explain that link and how your work has been able to bring such kind of innovation in other countries of the South, especially linked with COMSAT? Very quickly. Thank you very much, Professor Bambang.
Okay, thank you. It's a good opportunity for us to work together with COMSAT, and we ourselves, the ITS and COMSAT, have agreed to initiate the formation of so-called COMSAT ITS Center of Advanced Research and Innovation on Artificial Intelligence, IoT, and Robotics. So in that Center of Excellence, we are going to we had like share the experience, share the knowledge, as well as the doing work together. For example, for a few times ago, we share about how to build the oxygen generator with a member of the COMSAT. And at the end, we finally end up having this oxygen generator that can be used by the patient of COVID-19. So I guess COMSAT is a good vehicle for all of us, for everybody within the network, to share the experiences and knowledge that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This would be more we will bring into discussion. We also have our center, UNESCO Center on South-South Cooperation, ISTIC in Malaysia. COMSAT also has a university, COMSAT University in Islamabad. So let's discuss more later, but really excellent presentation. And the key message is COVID, while it has many bad dimensions, it has brought innovation faster, and the opportunities for South-South cooperation in technology, in MOOCs, in the different packages you have prepared is huge. Thank you very much. With that, we move on to our next presenter, which is our dear Miss Atsuko Okuda. So sorry if I misspell your name, Miss Atsuko. So she's Regional Director at ITU since April 2020. She has been also very active in ESCAP and also Escava. So wonderful experience in broadband connectivity and many areas of information technology in many countries in Asia. So we are very lucky to have her, and she is also well educated, has also linked with the UNEU. So I think this is really wonderful that we will be able to hear about the work of ITU from Ms. Atsuko. Over to you, Ms. Atsuko.
Thank you very much, Professor Khan. Good morning to everyone. And I will try to live up to the expectation of the punctuality. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting ITU to this very important event. And I'm delighted to share some of the initiatives that we are replicating using the South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation modality in Asia and the Pacific. As Professor Khan introduced, my name is Atsuko Okuda. I am the Regional Director of ITU Office for Asia and the Pacific based in Bangkok. Next slide, please. As some of you may know, ITU is the oldest UN agency established in 1865, and we cover 193 member countries globally. And we support in the area of radio communication, standardization, and development, focusing on narrowing the digital divide. And I just want to highlight one very important features of ITU, which is the academic and private sector membership. So over 900, about 900 members from academia and private sectors actively contribute to the work of ITU, which makes ITU's work more balanced and multi-stakeholder based. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to talk about what COVID did to ICT and connectivity development. And I think we all recognize that while there are negative consequences on the economic growth, employment, and social aspects, there are also positive, I would say, the spillover. For instance, since a massive number of people moved and shifted to digital technology and platforms, the infrastructure, subscription, and usage has also jumped. And this slide shows the differences between 2019 and 2020, before and after COVID. And as you can see, we see a significant jump in terms of the coverage, in terms of the connectivity installation, as well as the number of subscribers and usage. This and other figures are available in the ITU publication, Digital Trends, and I'll be happy to share more details if that's useful. Next slide, please. However, it doesn't mean that digital divide disappeared. That's the challenge. Those who were not connected in rural areas and those children at home who had to use e-learning were not automatically connected to the internet and enjoy the service. So we still have a major persistent digital divide to address. So in order to support and accelerate the effort, ITU has 10 thematic priorities, which we believe is comprehensive to address different aspects of ICT for development. Next slide, please. Now, today I would like to talk about three major initiatives relevant to our discussion today. One is the connectivity. The network and infrastructure are bread and butters of ITU, and as you see on the screen, ITU developed and maintains the transmission map, which shows which countries and which island and which villages are connected with submarine cables as well as terrestrial cables. So however, as you see, especially in the case of the Pacific, one island being connected with a submarine cable doesn't mean that everyone else in that country can be connected. So accordingly, we have initiatives to promote satellite connectivity as well as the terrestrial connectivity. What happens after cable lands in particular location, and how that is expanded and extended to remote and rural areas. And I want to share with you that ITU has implemented a satellite communication initiative from 2014 to 2022, supporting 9 Pacific Island countries, providing 93 satellite ground stations, so that those communities and islands which are not connected with the submarine cables can benefit from the internet and the benefit the internet can provide. So this is one key aspect of ITU in support of the physical infrastructure and networks. But then you may ask, what's next? And I want to also share that for those countries and islands that we supported, we realized that they were actually using the satellite connectivity capabilities to connect schools and hospitals and government offices, so that the benefits are equally distributed or equitably distributed in the community. And we are now developing, based on this model, a smart island. Next slide, please. So what's next is a major question. As you see on the screen, the smart island, smart village, to connect them and to encourage and empower the community for the usage as well as to access the digital services is really the main question to address the digital divide. And increasingly, we are having more smart village. For instance, we are piloting in Pakistan, and smart islands that we have launched in the Pacific. But that will be supported by and through our support to the government in the capital. Because if the digital services are not available, that will be very hard for communities to be empowered. So using and capitalize on the whole of government approach, we are supporting the ICT ministry as well as the line ministries, such as Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, around the ICT strategies that government has and is being developing. And that is the translation of SDGs in the digital format. And I hope that this whole of government approach and multi-stakeholder approach to really focus on the benefits and well-being of people in the island and villages would address the challenges that I just described as the COVID-19, as well as the persistent development challenges that we are facing in Asia and the Pacific. Next slide, please. And additionally, to highlight and emphasize the importance of South-South cooperation, we work with the TSDSI, which is the Telecommunication Standards Development Society of India, and the Department of Telecommunication India, the webinar series focusing specifically on South-South cooperation and promotion of digital innovations across the developing countries in Asia and the Pacific. We organized a successful inaugural session on 2nd of September, and we are selecting the key topics which the innovations are active, and the academia and the private sector and governments in other developing countries can benefit. So the next session is scheduled on 29 September on the topic of revolutionizing digital financial services. And I would like to encourage your participation as well as the participation of your networks to actively engage and learn from each other. That's the whole purpose of co-creating the digital innovation in Asia and the Pacific. So thank you very much. I hope that I lived up to the standards of the punctuality. Next slide, please. The last one is about the promotion of our work through Twitter and LinkedIn. We have a QR code for those who are interested, and I will be happy to take any questions that you and the participants may have. So thank you very much for giving me and ITU the opportunity to present some of the initiatives that we are implementing in Asia and the Pacific.
Thank you very much. A wonderful presentation, Ms. Atsuko, and you are doing a great job. I just have one clarification which may be interesting for our colleagues who have joined. You have displayed a very interesting map of the marine cables and the terrestrial versus satellite. So, and you mentioned a very important point, which is the equity among nations. That's very important for South-South cooperation and especially for small islands. So in your view, as the regional director of ITU, where things are moving, would there be more innovations into satellite? And also you have mentioned whole of country approaches for the nations who are not so much with resources, where they would be investing and how UN system can help them and help nations to get over this digital divide. If you can quickly give your view about satellite versus terrestrial and whole of government approach, which one would be more useful in the context of the technology advances?
Thank you. These are very important questions. Regarding the transmission map as well as the satellite versus terrestrial cables, ideally, we should go in parallel, and we should really accelerate the effort. However, I'm glad that you mentioned the satellite because there are more satellite operators in the scene, and we hope that there are more competition perhaps and the offering of more conducive services to make sure that the prices go down, because in the past the challenges of satellite communication was really the sustainability. So by combining different means and spreading equitably the benefits of, let's say, bandwidths, we hope that all of them will enable the communities to sustain the connectivity for a long term, because this has been the challenge throughout the world. So that's the reason why we would like to invite all of the participants and participating agencies to join us, because the whole of government and multi-sectoral approach, multi-stakeholder approach are the keywords to make it sustainable. Now, regarding the investment, Professor Khan, it's a related question, because what the service providers are hoping is really the widening and deepening of the usage of the bandwidths that they are providing, so that when there are more users using and paying for the services, that will create a virtuous cycle of expanding the market, more subscribers, more network expansion, which will be encouraged through that. So we want to create that momentum by investing perhaps from the UN agency to promote this whole of government approach in the center, and to make sure that the city residents and the villagers and the islanders will start using. So we hope that this approach will be meaningful and timely, because I believe that this will also support the post-COVID recovery for the countries which are covered. And just to answer your last question on the UN approach, recognizing the benefits of this approach, ITU and other 10 UN agencies actually have developed two major projects, including UNESCO, Professor Khan, in case you're wondering, to support this whole of government approach around the digital technology and digital platform. In fact, last Friday, we had a briefing session with the Pacific ambassadors in New York, and we received quite strong endorsements that they see this as a next step, leapfrogging, and this will bring the island nations to the digital future that they can all benefit. So this idea, in fact, if I can also add, originated from a pilot in Niger in Africa. And this is where I believe the South-South cooperation can be demonstrated very, very strongly, because the original idea came from a very different context of landlocked countries in Niger, but it was adapted and it was expanded and it was developed into this the smart islands. So we will be happy to share more information on the smart islands which are being rolled out, and part of it is also supported by ADB, and we hope that collectively capitalizing on all agencies and all ministries' capabilities, we can really create this virtuous cycle of digital empowerment. So thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much. Very wonderful answers. They really have explained further the role of South-South cooperation and helping small islands and developing states, as we call them, SIDS, satellite versus terrestrial. We will continue this discussion, and we really appreciate your wonderful leadership. We are rolling out ICT's policy in education. For example, UNESCO is rolling out in Mongolia. So there's so many opportunities for UN system, but we need to get over these digital divides and haves and have-nots. Now we move on to our next presenter. Also very exciting work. Ms. Kate Sutton, Head of Regional Innovation Center of UNDP, Bangkok Regional Hub. Kate is a wonderful leader who has worked also with the private sector and Head of Corporate Social Innovation at the UK's Innovation Foundation, Nesta. So she has a wonderful experience also linking Africa. So we will be able to hear many things, including Pacific. So with such insights into SMEs and understanding of the private sector and now in the UN. So we look forward to this next presentation from Ms. Kate Sutton. Dear Kate, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that warm and kind introduction, and thank you to the presenters before me. I am the rapporteur for this session, so I have been noting the key points with excitement and interest, and hopefully mine will add to this conversation. Should I share my screen, or will someone share my slides here?
You can, you will control back.
I can. Yes, I will do so. Let me do this. Okay. So yes, thank you for that warm introduction. My name is Kate Sutton and I run the Regional Innovation Centre for the UNDP based in Bangkok. And just a very brief introduction to the UNDP. Well, I guess many of you will know that our task, our job is to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, no mean feat in itself. However, the Bangkok Regional Hub and the Asia Pacific Regional Hub, we cover 35 country offices from Samoa to Iran, and we have, so 24 country offices across 35 countries. Sorry, let me get that right. So we have the Asia Pacific in our heart, and I'll be speaking from that perspective today. So we know the challenge, and I think there's been some statistics on some of the other presentations, so I won't run through all of them, but I think just a couple of really key highlights that we need to be thinking about kind of coming out of COVID is this access to the labour market, that digital divide, and the digital divide and access for citizens to not only connectivity but also the skills that they need moving forward has been exacerbated, and that point's been made by various speakers, so I won't labour on that. We've also been particularly concerned by misinformation during the COVID pandemic, and we know that fake news is 70% more likely to be retweeted than truth on Twitter, and certainly the UNDP have been keeping a kind of eye on that, as well as, you know, the key challenges of infrastructure and sustainability around digital. We've also been really interested in, you know, how the government readiness to respond to this COVID pandemic when it comes to digital. So those who were ready have been able to really engage and sort of protect citizens and ensure that there was connectivity much more than those who were not ready and who weren't ready kind of to capture this digital transformation moment. Reported across our region, the majority of governments report that they don't feel ready to kind of take advantage of the opportunities that are coming next. And I think that kind of readiness and that what's required for readiness is definitely front of our mind and some of the challenges going forward. So exactly, those are the statistics, but what sits behind that? And we see sort of three areas: these systems challenges. Everybody talks about how governments work in silos, and that continues to be a challenge. But there's often a poor understanding and application of digital across governments that we work with. There are functional challenges within communities, which includes capacity and capability, and this has been highlighted in various presentations. So that digital divide is exacerbated not just by connectivity and infrastructure, but also by what happens in communities and how these programs and processes and infrastructure are rolled out. And of course, infrastructural challenges. And I think it's important to raise that there often has been a significant amount of investment, but the return on investment for governments have been patchy, and there's a nervousness, I guess, a risk aversion to make the necessary investment in what's needed infrastructurally, despite the increase in infrastructural spend we've seen, as pointed out by the previous speaker. So all of our work is about achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And I really want to say, for us, digital is means to an end, not an end in itself. And I think often when we're talking about digital transformation, we really forget that. We talk about the statistics, which is what I just did. We talk about the tech, but we don't actually talk about why. What are we trying to achieve here? And I like to think that the UNDP put that at the heart of our work. And digital is a means to achieving all of these goals. And digitisation and innovation run as cross-cutting themes across our organisation, and we try to encourage governments to think about digital in this way, because if we think about it, if we continue to push the silo, then we'll only get ministries of IT to be digital. We won't be spreading the benefits of digital across society. So a little bit more about our approach, which might help you understand how we've approached this COVID moment. So a whole of society approach which leaves no one behind. But what does that really mean? Well, sometimes it means that we're the ones that are out in the outer islands developing infrastructure or doing learning programs. It sometimes means that we're working with disabled communities or Indigenous communities. And that often can be really challenging work, but incredibly vital if we want to ensure that the economic dividends of digital transformation are also captured by everybody, as well as the social ones. Our work is very bottom up. The way that we work is that although we have an office in New York, the majority of the work is really driven and governed by the governments and the country offices that we have. And that's what makes the UNDP a unique organisation to work with. And it is incredibly strengths-based in that space. And so how we've actually implemented our digital work across the region looks really different depending on what country you're in, your level of digital readiness. If you think about Asia Pacific, and I always find it really difficult to clump the whole region together when we're talking about digital, because obviously we have the small island developing states which have very different infrastructure needs to some of the huge countries that exist within the region. And we also have some of the most digitally advanced countries in the world within our region, and really capturing those learnings and transferring those learnings across the region can sound really easy, but in essence can often be very difficult based on sort of cultural and as well as practical considerations around just how countries exist and are. And finally, we take a systems-based approach to all our work. So that connects to the piece around the Sustainable Development Goals, but also it's grounded in foresight and anticipation. And I think this connects to what do we do next? How do we make this work more sustainable, which all of the speakers have spoken about? You know, how do we really take this moment that we've had and all of this learning and all of this innovation that we've had and ensure that there's some sustainability? And as well as co-creation and change from policy all the way through to practice. So what we do on the ground connects back up to policy, and what we do in a policy space connects to what's happening on the ground. That's a really important principle of our work. But also that foresight and anticipation piece becomes incredibly important when you're thinking about what are the jobs for the future, and not the future 2050, the future 2030. And certainly this rapid work from home, this rapid digitalization has changed what the future of the workforce across the region. So what did we do during COVID and how did we share this South-South? I just want to raise a couple of key points. So I think our key successes really were around the e-vaccine deployment in Asia Pacific, having already been developed in India and then in Indonesia and Bhutan. We've rolled out a e-vaccine solution across the region, and that's been incredibly exciting, tracking, monitoring both the vaccines, but also the beneficiaries, and that kind of really practical, innovative, vital support for COVID, you know, to dealing with the immediate pandemic was really important for us and something we were able to do. Also quickly kicked into gear universal basic income pilots, e-commerce solutions so that people could move online and digital payments could happen from governments to citizens, but also for consumers. Really basic support around digital parliaments. You know, how do we go online and continue to have our select committees? How do we ensure democratic participation during this time, and moving public servants online? So across the region, doing really practical work, hardware, software, training, and that, you know, now the challenge for us is how do we ensure that some of these benefits are sustainable and they're not just for the moment. So how we share this information, we've got an incredibly rich network, obviously, of those country offices, and they share together. And as at the Regional Innovation Centre and the Regional Hub, our job is to ensure that we connect the dots. You can see here in some of the examples, implementing virtual courts in Bangladesh, you know, really some basic but important work that meant that the life in the world can continue on during COVID, and sharing that those solutions, not just the case studies, but also scaling those solutions. Well, if it worked here, what are the elements that we could take to other countries has been the core part of our COVID response. And just thinking about the future, this is how we see digital strategy. So what, you know, protection is incredibly important, and we haven't talked too much about that in the previous presentations or in my presentation, but ensuring ethics and data sovereignty. And, you know, during COVID, you know, there's been a lot of testing the waters around sharing of information, and particularly around COVID scanning. And there's a lot of discussion and important debates to be had at a policy level about how we take some of this work and learning, and how do we take this forward and use some of this technology for perhaps other areas while protecting our most vulnerable citizens. How do we ensure accessibility and availability? And accessibility is multifaceted, as everybody on this webinar, I'm sure this discussion, I'm sure knows. And we focus really strongly on these kind of key areas of infrastructure, better public services, helping with human rights and regulation, supporting e-commerce and business, and of course, engaging citizens with digital literacy to ensure that they can engage. So for us, really, medium term to long term, working strongly on digital transformation in various countries, on developing roadmaps and developing strategies for actually embedding some of this short-term emergency work, rolling out digital ministries within countries that need them or don't have them to try and embed digital first in their kind of DNA. Developing digital public goods to try to create as much open source and accessible both hardware, software, and all of the people hardware that goes around that, to really ensure that we can make most of this as free and accessible and available as possible for people, as part of our principles. So hopefully that's given you, it's a very quick whistle-stop tour of our work, but really wanted to echo some of the key points that were made in previous presentations, which is we have this opportunity for inclusion. We've seen the digital divide grow during this time. We've seen incredible opportunities that are there to be captured, but how we do that is still actually incredibly elusive, and a very important job for policymakers to be doing whilst still getting through this crisis. We're still in the pandemic, and we're still feeling the impacts of this pandemic and the fatigue of the pandemic. So being able to capture those possibilities and opportunities during this fatigue is, I guess, what we're all here to try and enable. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, dear Kate, for an excellent presentation. And I am very thankful to you for bringing this digital inclusion. As with other speakers, I would like to ask you a clarification. I am your student of all of you, not really professor. So Astuko Okoda presented to us the whole of government, and you have presented whole of society and systems approach. What are the differences and what are the commonalities in the context of work within countries and for South-South cooperation? Is it UNDP and ITU maybe talking the same thing in a different way?
I think obviously a whole of government approach is vital, and I think I alluded to that when I talked about governments working outside of silos and ensuring that the benefits of digital are captured across all of the areas. So, for example, in the education ministries or in the health ministries, and I think that whole of government approach is vital. I don't think anybody, I think we've moved beyond this initial, we need to set up a government digital ministry and they will be the owners and the holders and the arbiters of everything digital, because that would just take us in a direction that doesn't achieve these benefits for everyone. I think the systems-based approach probably stretches the work slightly further, but I think it's very complementary, and I think we would absolutely agree with the ITU approach, because they also spoke about engaging civil society, engaging the private sector. They spoke, so I think that it's complementary, which is how do you look at the from to. So rather than from paper-based to online, how do we look at from an education system that doesn't deliver for everybody because not everybody can access it, to a new education system where everybody has access, where people can access it at the time and that suits them, where people can access quality education regardless of where you are in the world. I mean, that's the systems transformation that we want to see, achieving those sustainable development goals. And I think that obviously our colleagues, we're in solidarity with our colleagues at the ITU, and there's absolutely shared agenda there in terms of achieving those goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's very important, that UN is complementary, working with each other, with the societies we serve, as well as for all the 17 sustainable development goals. So thank you very much. I will come back with another question to you, dear Kate. But let's now start our discussion, and you have a very difficult task of combining all the discussions. So we have heard 4 excellent speakers, and if anybody would like to use the chat box from, there are about 33 participants, including myself, feel free to raise if you have any questions. But we have prepared some questions beforehand, and those questions are relatively generic, but we can make them more specific as well. But really, our focus is digital transformation, understanding the Asia-Pacific region, small countries, big countries, technically advanced countries, countries who are struggling with the digital divide, and also a whole of society approach where we are making sure the benefits go to everyone. And also the new digital natives, as many people use this term, new digital natives, the social transformation which is happening. And that's where we also have countries which are very, very fast moving and countries who are moving very slow. One very interesting fact is there are more people in the south who will have mobile phone connections than the people in the north. So south is moving very fast on these areas. It's not that we are not moving fast. So let me start with Mr. Masanori Kondo. I would like to go back to him with the experience from Asia Pacific telecommunity and the work which they have done during COVID and as it will continue. So what do you think, dear Mr. Masanori, as the key opportunities moving forward beyond this emergency phase towards the use of technologies for digital transformation of societies to create better jobs, better life, like as we said, all the 17 sustainable development goals. Over to you, dear Mr. Kondo. What are the opportunities and challenges in your view?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Khan. First of all, I'd like to thank our dear colleagues or panelists, which I think their presentation are very informative to me. So I learned a lot from their presentations.
Me too.
Thank you very much. So in responding to your question, opportunity and the challenges, actually, while I understand that as Atsuko-san and Kate-san mentioned that our approach should be whole governmental or whole society or whole stakeholders, but as APT is a very small organization, we are specified in the, let's say, what Ministry of ICT can or should do. So in that respect, let's say opportunities. First, let me talk about opportunities. So opportunities, certainly, as I said in my presentation, digital gap has been a very big problem since the commercialization of the internet in early 90s. So we are talking about how to bridge the digital gap. But I think, for instance, UNDP, the scope of work is very broad, education, healthcare, and maybe ICT. But from the perspective of APT or ICT ministry, we have to prioritize and try to persuade other ministries how important ICT is. But I can say that the kind of opportunity is that now we don't need to make such an effort because everyone understands how ICT can provide the benefit to the society and how important it is. So in such a way, opportunity is there, but at the same time, agenda or challenges are also increasing. Because again, the digital, for instance, as an example, I pick up the digital gap. Digital gap has been a problem, but we have been doing many things in order to bridge the gap. But now we focus on that, and then everyone understands the priority to bridge the digital gap has been like hired or upgraded. So what we can do in addition to what we had done. So I think, as I said, I think one of the good example was what each policymakers and regulators conducted or implemented under the as emergency measures at the outbreak of COVID-19, which is, for instance, additional allocation of bandwidths temporarily, or try to think about network sharing by introducing a new technology. So frequency has a certain bandwidth, but with a new technology, we can accommodate additional services at the same time. So there are many technologies and services are out there, but it's not so easy to coordinate between existing business and coming new services. So challenges, many challenges we are facing, but I would like to focus specifically as a policymakers in the Ministry of ICT that what they need to consider to provide a good infrastructure by considering competition policy and tax incentive for investment and consumer protection and so on.
Yeah, no, that's very important contribution, dear Masanori Kondo. If we can go back a little bit, you have very clearly mentioned the work within the ministries related to ICT. And now ICT is everyone's business. They also artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. I think in my view, one of the biggest things which has happened is cloud-based sharing of data and cloud-based computing. We can share computers across the world, but we need bandwidth to be able to work properly in everywhere. So that's where maybe as the way forward for ICT ministries, you see they are the service providers to the other ministries, or you see better integration of maybe the function of ICT related ministries into the other parts of the government. What do you see as the future way forward for this transformation, and how you see big countries versus small countries, ICT based ministries versus a whole of the government, maybe merger of ICTs into different ministries? Your view at the individual level also very valuable.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Khan. It's a very, very difficult question and kind of sensitive, because now currently, as you observe in many countries in this region, some governments are trying to merge some function of ministries. So the Minister of ICT, the name of Ministry of ICT is, our members' ministry's name has been always changing in such a way that how to promote the policy agenda. As you said, or as Atsuko-san mentioned, it's a cross-sectorial. So there used to be a Ministry of ICT, but there could be a Ministry of Consumer or Ministry of something in such a way that, as Kate said, digitalization is everywhere, ubiquitous digitalization. So we can find everywhere. So we may in the future not need to have a Ministry of ICT itself, but in such a way, I think it's very difficult. And now many countries are trying to think about what would be a good, effective, and efficient way in terms of like an agency or government agency and ministry to promote the digitalization and digital transformation.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we captured this. First of all, I think very important is how the policies can support adequate bandwidth. Very, very important. So I think this is an important way forward for the region, that the policies should address this issue, not only for pandemic, for future, and how these roles are emerging for the ICT-based services and ministries, and linking with all sectors of society. I think these two we can capture that these are very important elements, if you agree. Now I move to Professor Bambang, who gave us an excellent overview from a ComSat ITS. Dear Professor Bambang, you have given us the rapid transformation which has happened in your ITS, in your institute, in your university. What would be the elements? Is it the software? Is it the hardware? Is it the capacity building of the professionals? Is it the South-South cooperation from the point of view of sharing these experiences with other ComSats, institutes, and universities? Can you please give us how the success for digital transformation would look like for the academia? Over to you, Professor Bambang.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Khan. In our institution, as I said, like this blessing in disguise for us to have this pandemic. Although we face a hard time, but we use this opportunity to push ourselves hard, such that we can have the technology in terms of digital transformation can work faster. So as I mentioned earlier, that I think the most important thing is the leadership is play a very important role in the successful implementation of this digital transformation. As I mentioned, there are several key elements: the strategy, the organization, work culture, technology, users, human resources, and all of those need the support from the leader. The strategy itself, for example, that we have to have a IT policies to adapt the complex needs and the changes, and then we have to IT implementation for rapid development and integration. Therefore, we use this open standard and all those things. Those I guess give us the opportunity to move faster, so we can work with others and easy to manage, to integrate the system in the one that we have. In terms of a bigger network with ComSat and all those things, I guess COMSAT, UNOS could be a venue for the best practice to all of us to share the information. As I mentioned earlier, that we have the Center of Excellence with COMSAT in AI Center, Natural Product Center as well. Therefore, those things can be shared and we can work together with the others member of the COMSAT, and also it can be used to support and sharing important findings. So when we as I mentioned earlier as well, the development of oxygen concentrator, we have a good discussion with I think our colleagues in India. So in India, in Australia, and for sure with the other member of the COMSAT, they can also have the similar things. I guess that's for me. Can I add a little bit on your first question, please? Is it possible?
Yeah, please do so. I have another question for you. Actually, academia, I'm a professor still. I like to profess when the time is right. For academia, easy, very easy, because we need to innovate. We need to publish papers. We need good gadgets to be able to work into future-based, let's say, research. But how do you link with the private sector? How do you form partnerships? I see also, Professor Bambang, you have a very important role for research, innovation, and partnership. How do you actually commercialize for the better benefits of society? Can you please also shed some light on social? Yeah.
The innovation that we have, we kind of set the paradigm of our research. In the beginning, probably not in the beginning. In the past, we used to I want to do a research in this area and in this particular thing. But then now we have something so-called the flagship of our institution, the research flagship. So we from the leader, we try to push our researcher. Okay, now when you are going to the research, you should be able to see what's actually demanded by the society. Therefore, we kind of say like demand-driven research. When we see those things, and then we can come up with something new, we can come up with innovative product. We are sure that the product is the one that needed by the society, and therefore it's very easy to find partners, very easy to find a private sector to be able to jump and come with us to get those things commercialized. One of the probably biggest example that we have, we are the one who initiate the scooter, the motorbike, electric vehicle in Indonesia, and then in the beginning it is very hard because at that time probably electric vehicle is something new. But we approached the government, we approached the Ministry of Research and Development, and then we approached through them. We can approach the president, so the president ride the vehicle, and then those things becoming something big, and then it's very easy for us to get on board with the private sector. Now the vehicle has been commercialized and produced by private sector. So that's how we see that we should be able to try to do a research which is really needed by the society, not the one that I'm going to do this, but we try to see the demand-driven research. Although the uniqueness and the what do you call, the genuine of the research has to be there, not the one that has been in the market for years. I guess that's what we did.
Thank you very much. I think this is very clear. If I can summarize for Kate, Kate is very capable by herself. I think this is a new era for digital transformation. Academia, private sector, and government has to work in new ways within the country and for promoting South-South cooperation. So we need new models of collaboration between academia, with the private sector and the government and across countries, if I have understood you correctly. So let's continue, dear Professor Bambang. I need to move now to Ms. Atsuko. Thank you very much for your contributions and many insightful ideas. So, dear Ms. Atsuko, thank you again for your excellent presentation. ITU is leading the way for building the capacities in the countries, and especially from the point of view of getting over digital divide. In our region, Asia Pacific, we have some nations like China, Japan, as well as, let's say, the countries like South Korea and the countries which are emerging, like Malaysia is doing a wonderful job. Thailand is doing a great job. As United Nations, how should we approach bigger countries versus smaller countries? What would be your advice? You have given us so many ideas, Ms. Atsuko, that how do we approach nations working together, creating South-South cooperation with different socio-economic and development trajectories from low income, middle income, small islands. So we would like to get some of your insights into these different backgrounds of nations and how do we move forward. Are you there?
Yes,
thank you very much.
Thank you for this very important question. And perhaps I can give an example because I used the example of Pakistan and the Pacific Islands. I would like to talk about Southeast Asia and how we are supporting them with Australia. Perhaps that will answer your question. As these countries have been advancing very rapidly with the emerging technologies such as AI and big data, and as you rightly mentioned, some countries are catching up, and those are some of the ASEAN countries. However, when these, let's say, middle-income countries are reaching and approaching the saturation points, we observed that some of the challenges have emerged, which have a very significant socioeconomic impact. So if I can give an example of a project that we are implementing with Australia, we realized that, and I'm sure that you also agree, there are some AI-related ethics issues, such as a bias against women, bias against vulnerable groups, bias against those people who who are not connected. Therefore, their data doesn't exist. So when a program or algorithm is developed, their concerns and requirements are excluded in many cases. So there are many instances where the minorities are disadvantaged when the AI makes a decision on something, or women applies for a job, they have less chance to be selected. So with the expertise and the support from Australia, we are discussing and supporting some of the ASEAN member countries to look at it, to look at the challenge with, of course, the government, the focal point, but also with the civil society and academia, because for those emerging issues, government alone may or may not have the expertise. So we are involving different stakeholders within the country to address what is the best way forward. What would be the framework that will address these the challenges moving forward? So to answer your question, I believe that those countries which have advanced quite far can support not only financially, but with the experience and as well as the insight into how we can address these challenges that the middle income countries are facing at the moment. And I believe that we will increasingly see these challenges faced by developing countries which are rapidly climbing the ladder of the technological landscape or the progression. And this is where I believe the triangular cooperation really will come in a strategic way. So I hope that I answered your question, and I'll be happy to
very good.
follow up.
Thank you very much, because really this is important for us. South-South cooperation is very important. But if both countries really do not have that experience who want to do South-South cooperation, and it's not technological, we must also understand the social dimension, cyber security, cyber violence. They are becoming bigger and bigger issues related to the social media overall. And the use of technologies is creating many issues for jobs, for example. So we need to have the South-South and triangular cooperation, the countries who have moved faster, how they reach where they reach, what lessons we can learn, and that's where the UN can work together to bring those frameworks to the attention of the countries using our UNCTs, very important mechanism with the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Frameworks and with the stakeholders, the whole of the government, whole of society, whole of system approach. Thank you very much. My last request to Kate as part of our panel, then we can try to summarize. Dear Kate, you have heard our panelists very well. They have talked about technological, they have talked about the ministries, the new kind of relationship which is needed between academia. So I want to go back to your whole of society and inclusiveness. And inclusiveness is a very big challenge, leaving no one behind. I wouldn't like to be left behind, but somebody may have the danger of being left behind. People with disabilities, for example, they need to be properly catered. We need to also think about these cyber issues which we have. Would you like to give some ideas as the head of the Regional Innovation Center, the use of technologies, digital transformations, and the people who may be left behind or are vulnerable people? What are, in your views, those areas where we can create more South-South cooperation and this overall aim of 2030 agenda, leaving no one behind? Over to you.
Thank you. And I'm really aware that our clock is ticking down, so I'll be brief. I think it's a really important question. And I think for so often in these kinds of roles, we take a really top-down approach. So yes, there absolutely needs to be inclusivity embedded in policy making. So inclusive innovation is innovation that, you know, the means of innovation and the ends of innovation are inclusive. So, you know, how you develop your innovative things engages the people that are using them, as well as your outcomes. And I think having that in policy is really important. Otherwise, the money and the time and the energy and all of that good stuff that you need to make stuff happen doesn't happen. So I think that's really important. I also think that we often, you know, there's an incredible opportunity here for these citizens to be the innovators. So I think that we don't often capture that. If you're a disabled person, you're often the person that can help develop the product or service that will suit you and your needs best. So more sort of competitions and prizes and programs and incubators and accelerators and all of that really important stuff that we do so well in the private sector when we're trying to make a ton of money, we can also do for the social sector when we're trying to change a whole lot of lives. And that's up to, you know, governments to help facilitate, and I think that's incredibly important. So that's my 2 cents on how to do that one.
Really, very precise. Thank you very much. So we should not ignore the social challenges in this transformation, and proper policies and proper understanding which need to go with it. And again, I go back to Ms. Atsuko's link back to your question. We need to share through triangular cooperation such practices. Dear Kate, we have 1 minute and 20 seconds. You have enough material to present?
I do.
I think we have made excellent progress.
My challenge is going to be reducing it, but I do. Thank you so much for your great facilitation.
And I think we have done a wonderful job together. We have learned many things from our dear panelists. I'm sure you will agree with me, as Mr. Kondo has put it precisely. Bandwidth is an issue. How South-South cooperation can share better bandwidth, better policies. How do we bring in the ICT-related ministries more integration with the whole of government approach? Dr. Bambang has given from academia excellent example. Things which would have taken another 5 years have been done now. And we need a new partnership between academia, civil society, government, and South-South cooperation for whole of society. To me, society is the global village in which we live. So we need to continue to progress that. Then excellent presentation from our regional director of ITU, Ms. Atsuko. We now fully understand the terrestrial versus satellite and the role of nations and triangular cooperation. We need it to move forward. And lastly, Kate, wonderful, excellent contributions for linking whole of society and systems approach. With that, we move to the main plenary, and we thank Kate for being our reporter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
140 countries learnt about local disaster risk reduction for COVID-19. 14 southern countries received medical equipment, including 54 ventilators, 10 ambulances, over 30 hospital beds, and more than 1.2 million personal protective equipment. An e-learning platform for doctors and nurses, which had developed software and equipped remote healthcare providers in Vietnam, produced a module on COVID-19 training. In Sierra Leone, the digital loan and emergency COVID-19 credit product has reached to over 15,000 underserved community members. South-South Galaxy, an artificial intelligence-driven digital global platform, attracted 300 partners to virtually share their knowledge. It also enabled sharing over 600 solutions. 257 think tanks were brought together for frontier research. During this decade of action, 20 UN system entities are implementing projects across the 4 funds managed by the UNOSSE, capitalizing on their operational presence across the globe. In 2020, the combined portfolio of the 4 UNOSSE Trust Fund enabled 91 projects across 53 countries, as well as regional and global initiatives. These 4 trust funds vary significantly. The India, Brazil, and South Africa Facility for Poverty and Hunger Alleviation, operational since 2006, is a remarkable example of coordinated action by 3 southern countries, working jointly with the UN system for the benefit of other developing countries. The India, Brazil, and South Africa Fund has directly supported 31 developing countries with $40 million. Through the Perez Guerrero Trust Fund since 1983, the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the group of 77 member states annually approve small research and collaboration projects that have directly benefited 134 countries in areas of critical importance to the global south, such as trade, technology, agriculture, and technical cooperation. The India-UN Development Partnership Fund was established in 2017 to provide $150 million to sustainable development projects in fellow developing countries. The UN Fund for South-South Cooperation was created in 1995 by the United Nations General Assembly. In the last decade, it has received over $30 million in contributions from over 40 partners, mostly UN member states. China has been UNFSSE's major contributor, supporting global initiatives. UNFSSC also hosts a facility sponsored by the Republic of Korea, focused on promoting cooperation in science, technology, and innovation. The funds managed by UNOSSE are linked by one common element. They are guided by South-South principles and are a key instrument through which the UNOSSE delivers on its mandate of UN-wide system coordination and facilitation of South-South cooperation. They mainstream policy into practice, utilizing South-South and triangular cooperation to address common development challenges.
Dear panelists, moderators, and participants, thank you for coming back to the main session. I hope you had a wonderful discussion. Now I would like to invite the moderators of each session to lead us in sharing the summary of discussions in their respective breakout sessions. Mr. Fukuda, Chief Advisor from Japan International Cooperation Agency, is the moderator for session 1 on climate change and great development. May I ask if you would like to share your reflections on session 1 before calling on the rapporteur to brief participants on the key takeaways? Mr. Fukuda, are you there? All right, I guess Fukuda-san has lost his connection maybe. So Kun Narapat may I invite you to take the floor to share with us the key takeaways?
Thank you very much. I would like to brief all the guests and participants on the key takeaway of the breakout section 1 on climate change and green development. So panelists provided responses to the questions on the role of their regional organizations in facilitating climate change actions and the challenges faced by their regions, Pacific and South Asia regions, as well as the opportunities identified for further actions. The distinguished panelist, Ambassador Solomara, Secretary General of Pacific Islands Development Forum Secretariat, PIDF, he mentioned that responses to COVID-19 and climate actions are not mutually exclusive. The existential threat of climate change should not be at the expense of COVID-19 responses. PIDF has been taking an important role in strengthening Pacific voice in collective climate actions and building towards a resilient, robust green economy. For example, the Silver Declaration on Climate Change that called for the need to limit the global temperature to 1.5 degrees. He further discussed the challenges faced by the Pacific region, which include, number one, the increase of sea level, 2, financing needs for achieving a climate resilience, 3, how to incentivize the stakeholders to take climate actions, and finally, the differences in national policies in the Pacific region. In terms of opportunity, he mentioned that renewable energy is one of the ways forward towards green economic development, and the engagement with private sector and civil society organization should be further enhanced to foster a balanced development in the Pacific. From our second panelist, Dr. Masuma Rama, Director General of South Asia Cooperative Environment Program. He mentioned that the program have been playing an important role in sensitizing and also outreaching to topics in collaboration with other partners, including multilateral financing institutions. In terms of the challenges, there is a combination of national policy planning and standards, limited technology access, inadequate knowledge among the end users, and the lack of financing mechanisms and financiers for climate adaptation and mitigation measures in the South Asia region. For the opportunity, he discussed about the creation of a market for climate resilience infrastructure, how climate smart agriculture, renewable energy, and sustainable transport, as well as industrial energy efficiency and green and resilient building can be good investment opportunities for the region. It would be also important for the region to enhance stakeholder partnerships and community participations, and also incorporate sustainability in education programs and investing in research and technology transfer. Furthermore, he also mentioned that strengthening environmental governance is also important for fostering green development. Moving on to our next panelist from ESCAPE, Mr. Yosufa Mayava. He mentioned that ESCAPE is the most inclusive intergovernmental platform in Asia Pacific region that can promote inclusive participation and discourse of member states on emerging issues by facilitating regional approaches and using the intergovernmental platform as a guidance platform for deliberating collective actions and building policy consensus in line with global decisions. The challenges faced in the Pacific region that he identified include sea level rises and the impact to the economy due to ocean warming, which will decimate fisheries and also the bleaching of corals. He further highlighted that COVID-19 responses should not delay global climate actions, which may in turn delay the transition to green economy, and the ambitions should include the moral imperative. And finally, moving to our last panelist, Ms. Olfa Kaisami, Manager of Pacific Climate Change Center of the Secretariat of Pacific Regional Environment Program. She mentioned that the program acts as the knowledge center of excellence and provides applied research and capacity building activities through training and innovation to drive greater action on climate change in the Pacific region. For example, the Pacific Climate Change Center since 2019 has rolled out executive courses in which climate finance is one of the focuses. A network of climate change researchers is established to improve participation in the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Processes. Collaboration, she mentioned that collaboration is possible in developing tools to mainstream climate change adaptation and mitigation. Research, education, and training programs and the use of new information and communication technologies can be shared to enhance the effectiveness of adaptation initiative and inform policy formation on climate actions. So that's conclude the wrap up of breakout section 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Queen Chelsea. Thank you for the wrap up. So we also have the pleasure of inviting Professor Shahbaz Khan, Director and UNESCO Representative to the People's Republic of China, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Japan, Mongolia, and the Republic of Korea as our moderator for session 2 on digital transformation. Professor Shahbaz, may I invite you to take the floor?
Thank you very much. I'm not going to give the full report because Kate has done a wonderful job. I believe in that. So she has been our panelist as well as she's going to report many good ideas. I just want to give an overview. From the 4 panelists we have, very competent people. Mr. Masanori representing the Asia-Pacific telecommunity, Professor Bambang showing us innovation, what is happening in the academia, Ms. Atsuko giving us ideas of regional ITU efforts, and very importantly, Kate gave us many ideas of whole of society. In very simple way, with these 4 panelists and the questions and answers session, I first of all say, I feel I'm digitally transformed. So we are doing a wonderful job under the South-South Cooperation umbrella. Digital transformation is already happening. COVID has certainly accelerated many things, and this is very clear from academia. Things which were going to take another 5 years, they have happened now. Also very important to note is that the role of the ICT related ministries and the work which they have been doing, how it can mainstream into the whole of the government approach. So how do we make sure there is a proper bandwidth which is needed for doing digital transformation related work in every country? So there are digital divides there. That's where we also learned very importantly from ITU, how can we actually use satellite technologies versus terrestrial technologies? How can we ensure proper bandwidth? How can we actually promote more dialogue among nations to move forward on this digital galaxy, as we have the South-South galaxy? Digital galaxy also need to move forward. Very importantly, 3 concepts have come through. One concept is whole of the government approach, and whole of the government means we need to bring the digital transformation into all those areas which are necessary, the health, the education, the areas related to e-commerce, the areas related to bringing benefits to all those people who are vulnerable people. So whole of the government approach, whole of society approach, a systems approach. And in this regard, how can we make sure that the lessons which have been learned by the nations who moved very fast, can be shared with the nations who need those understandings, especially cyber security, cyber crime, cyber related social issues, how we need to move forward on those with the proper kind of frameworks. And it is a consensus that our SDGs is the proper framework where digital transformation can help nations through South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. So I really thank all the 4 excellent panelists, and I'm sure you will hear a lot more interesting ideas coming from Kate, who has been actively putting all those ideas into her reporting. Thank you very much, and I am thankful to everyone for a wonderful session and for UN Office of South-South Cooperation to invite me to moderate this session. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shabazz. Kate, may I invite you to take the floor then?
Okay, I'm not sure I have too much more to add, and I'm aware that we're running short of time, but I'll just have a look at our key points. So yes, how can resources like bandwidth be shared sustainably across the region long term? How can ICT ministries consider their roles to capture opportunities across different areas of government, this whole of government approach, which has already been elaborated on? How can we ensure that inclusion is a key part of, policy making and future policy around ICT and digital within governments across the region? New models of collaboration are needed for this new digital era. So how can academia and the private sector, government and civil society work together? Because everybody has sort of different resources, different networks, different experience that can be built on, and how can this drive change? We talked quite a bit about South-South cooperation in the context of Asia Pacific being, some incredibly developed countries, and those who are less developed and slower in the take up, and how to really share information on a kind of peer basis and share learning. And as it's just been alluded to, that whole of society and systems approach to digital, so that we see it as an enabler to achieve social impact rather than an end in itself. And we had some fantastic presentations that were from a very high level all the way down to some great examples of digital COVID transformation within universities and academic institutions. What can ministries of IT do? The introduction of digital smart islands and smart villages. So a great conversation and some great ideas to share with you, and hopefully to be taken forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kate Sutton. Now we have Mr. Calvin Sargent, Sustainable Enterprise Development Specialist from ILO Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. He is the moderator for Session 3 on SMEs and entrepreneurship. Mr. Sargent, would you like to share your insights on the session first before inviting the rapporteur to take the floor?
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone, afternoon as well, where that time may be. No, I think this was a really wonderful panel, very provocative, interesting points which were raised. We had Representative Dr. Said from the Economic Cooperation Organization. We had Mr. Penchal from SAC. We had Ms. Penchan from ASEAN, and we had Ms. Esther Bates from the Pacific Green Entrepreneurship Network. And I think they all responded to a number of questions which were posed to them earlier. A number of questions that sought to look at the impact of COVID on MSME, whether it was reaching those who it had intended to reach, issues of capacity development and greening and whatnot. And I think generally some of the key takeaways were, one, that the policy measures, a number of countries introduced policy measures throughout the region, ranging from grants to loans, from moratorium. Both Mr. Saka and Dr. Said, spoke to these issues. In India, for example, they actually use the pension fund as well, as a means of providing some support to MSMEs. But I think generally it's agreed that it's mixed really. For the more formal enterprises, one can argue that the measures have been reaching, the support has been reaching them. But the informal ones, and in this region, there are a large number of informal MSMEs. It is not reaching them for all kinds of reasons, maybe due to access, due to the risks, due to capacity, all of these kind of reasons. The point is that it may not be reaching as we would like. So we would like to see certainly greater efforts as it relates to reach and the policy measures reaching these informal MSMEs. We had a rich discussion as well on capacity development. Both Ms. Penchan and Ms. Green talked about the issue of capacity development, how important capacity development is, even for understanding what is available, and that has been affected in some countries. In Afghanistan, for example, and in a number of countries, COVID affected capacity development in a meaningful way. But luckily for digitalization, because now of digitalization and all of these media of delivery that we can use, we can still continue with capacity development and skills training and skills upgrade. And also we talked a lot about green business creation. In a number of areas, in a number of countries, we've seen green businesses and green business creation and becoming much more relevant coming out of COVID-19 pandemic. As we talk about the environment and protection of the environment, the issue of renewable energy and green business is now coming much more important in the forefront. I think South-South cooperation, we argued, is critical to support inclusive, sustainable, and resilient economy. We argue that South-South cooperation need to take into consideration the vulnerable among us, with the poverty, the poor, and as we try to build back better, whatever systems, whether it's social protection systems or whatever we put in place, it needs to ensure that the poverty and those less privileged are taken into consideration. And finally, we talked about decent work alongside, business and sustainable businesses. And we all agreed that decent work is possible, and you have to have decent work alongside SMEs as we go forward in the future. I think we also argued, and some colleagues made the comment that we needed better coordination and harmonization of MSME policies across the region. Because in each country you go, you have different MSME policies, different MSME laws and regulations. So if we can do a bit of harmonization as well at the South-South level, South-South cooperation level, it will go a great way in terms of support for the MSMEs. So I will stop there, and I think the rapporteur will now bring in a bit more of the information that we discussed in our panel. But I think it was a very enjoyable, rich panel, and I want to thank all the panelists who presented this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent. Yejin, may I invite you to take the floor then?
Thank you, Ocean, and thank you, Mr. Sargent, for all this, sharing your insights. Since you have given a bit of background, I would just like to emphasize that there's been 3 keywords coming out from our session, which is scale capacity building, greening, and digitalization. And all these cross-cutting sectors are important. And we have learned that all our regional institutions are working hard to facilitate technical and policy support in their respective regard. But as emphasized, we need further harmonization of policies. And just to kind of emphasize that Dr. Saya Yaha Akila, Deputy Secretary General from the Economic Cooperation Organization, he also emphasized that his institution welcomes the cooperation from other regional institutions to address the constraint that ECO is facing. He also elaborated that security measures are also very important, especially taking note of the current situation in Afghanistan. Even if you want to provide capacity building support, how can we do when there's not much security? So these are some of the things that I would like to emphasize, and hence we need harmonized standards and policy, and collective action are more important than ever. So regional cooperation are very important stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Yejin. And finally, thank you everyone who contributed to the panel discussions. We sincerely appreciate your inputs. Mr. Nakla, may I invite you to wrap up our meeting today?
It's afternoon. I was just about to say good morning, but it just hit afternoon. And so I will not take much of your time. I just want to say about 4 points. I have organized quite a number of these UN days for South-South cooperation, but I think today was kind of special. Starting from the opening plenary, I sensed this sense of urgency from the principal speakers on the need to use South-South cooperation to address the very pressing problems that we're facing today, which are spearheaded by the COVID-19 pandemic. And what they said about South-South cooperation is that it can help to resolve the problems because of its principles and solidarity. And so those are very important. We're not saying that South-South cooperation can solve all problems, but they're saying in a situation like this, there is a need to call upon these principles of South-South cooperation and solidarity to work together to solve the problems. So I think this was the first point. And then the second point was on the issues that they also raised: climate change and green recovery, digital transformation, and recovery of the economy are key, not only for the world, but specifically for the region as well. But what became obvious from the discussions, I sat in on the breakout group 3 on economic recovery. And what I realized is that even though we can use these 3 as tools on their own, however, they cut across all the themes. We discussed digital transformation, we discussed the green recovery in that group as well. And from the presentations that have been made by the other groups, it seems to have been the same way. And then the third point I wanted to make is very specific requests. ESCAP in their opening said that they would like to see the intergovernmental platform used from here onwards. And so we will be following up with ESCAP to try to see whether this can become a platform on its own or it can be integrated into the digital forum, regional Director General's forum. And so that's one very specific follow-up that we can do. And last but not least, there was a request by several institutions for working together, particularly in harmonizing of policies, practices, and to ensure inclusion of everybody. And in particular, pertaining to inclusion, they also focused on the issues about how women are affected, particularly in the session that I sat in, the business sector, that for the most part, they found it more difficult to access the same kind of help that is available for other business leaders. And so those are the 4 points that I wanted to mention broadly from the plenary and also taken from the breakout sessions. The summaries for the breakout sessions are wonderful. And thank you very much to the moderators and the rapporteurs for capturing that. Now, my next point is to tell you what we're going to do after this. We'll put together a report. I think we recorded all the sessions. So working with our partner institutions, we'll put together a report for sharing with everybody with a particular focus on areas that can be followed through. And as I said, also there's the issue that ESCAP mentioned about possible platform for intergovernmental organizations. And so this will be coming to you. One request that I have is please visit the South-South because you will find a lot of information. Please visit the South-South profiles for the region. And if you want to be interviewed as well, let us know. That brings me to the end of this event and my closing remarks, which are basically to thank all the co-organizers, UNESCAP and UNDP, for fully supporting us and providing ideas that have resulted, I think has been quite a successful event. I thank you very much. I would like to thank the moderators. They also were very, very helpful in instructing us from our perspective of being these people who talk a lot about South-South cooperation. However, when we indicated that we'd like to talk on these 3 areas, we had to rely on the expertise from UNESCO, from ILO, and from the support that is provided by JICA through our friend who has worked with us in the past. And then last but not least, of course, this would not have been successful without you, the participants, who listened and asked some questions and participated in the discussions. We look forward to continue interacting with you. And I'd like to thank, last but not least, our MC for the day. Thank you for a job well done. This brings us to the end of the day, and I'll hand over back to the MC. Maybe she has a few things to say. Thank you so much. Sorry we cannot offer you any lunch or anything, but please, wherever you are, have some lunch. Back to you, Kristen.
Thank you, Dennis. And thank you all. Thank you again to everyone who joined us in celebrating the UN Day for South-South Cooperation. The meeting is now closed. Goodbye.